The furious growls rippling from the human's throat chilled Boron to his core as Jeffrey Adams, the most feared beast among the carnivorous human warriors, paced the lab with eyes blazing and teeth bared, snarling that the ruthless draconian empire had engineered a deadly plague to exterminate Boron's entire species. Jeffrey slammed his fist against the countertop, making the delicate instruments rattle. He had been sent to this backwater planet Zephyr on routine military duty, only to discover upon arrival that the timid rabbit-like Orion race faced swift extinction from a mysterious sickness sweeping their population. Millions were already dead. But it wasn't just some natural disease. It was a targeted bioweapon designed to erase the Orions and steal their resource-rich world. The Galactic Council had coldly written them off as a lost cause, banning any aid. They deemed the meek creatures not worth the trouble. Yet as Jeffrey raged in the lab, Boron saw something spark in those fierce predator eyes. A primal urge to hunt down this threat, to fight back against the Orion's annihilation. Ancient legends spoke of humans as apex killers, and Jeffrey's sharp instincts now screamed at him to protect the helpless, to destroy those who preyed on the weak. The human suddenly strode to an encrypted console, fingers flying over the keys, accessing classified military intel. Screw the Council and their bullshit non-interference directive. I'm not going to just sit back and watch genocide. He met Boron's gaze intently. I can find a cure. With my knowledge of Orion biology and human biotech, I can crack this thing, but I need your help. I need someone to watch my back while I work. Be my guide. Boron hesitated only a moment before nodding resolutely. If anyone could save them from this cruel engineered fate, it was this human. This ferocious predator who now channeled his killer drive to a noble purpose. This would-be savior of a doomed race. But as they worked in secret to unravel the plague's design and devise an antidote, time was swiftly draining away. Each hour, more Orions perished in agony across the globe as Jeffrey raced against the ticking clock of an entire species' imminent demise. Yet the conspiracy ran deeper than they imagined. Draconian spies lurked on Zephyr, intent on sabotaging their efforts. And to Boron's horror, he soon saw Jeffrey himself succumbing to the bioweapon's infection, its gene-targeted tendrils burrowing into the man's body. As more humans arrived in orbit, tense debates raged among their ranks. Obey the Galactic Council's decree to abandon the Orions, or follow their basic human nature to fight for the innocent? In impassioned speeches, Jeffrey urged his brethren that this was their chance to prove humans were more than mindless, bloodthirsty brutes, that they could be protectors, heroes. But grim truths soon came to light. Through Orion biotech records, Jeffrey made a chilling discovery. This was no ordinary plague. It specifically attacked the Orion's psychic ability to access their racial memories. Even if a physical cure was found, their ancestral knowledge, their entire history and culture would be forever lost. The Draconians didn't just want them dead, but erased from the universe itself. And in a cruel twist of fate, ancient hieroglyphs revealed that eons ago, the wise Orions had been uplifted and guided by a long-lost human civilization, before those ancestors were wiped out in a vicious galactic war. Now, once again, human hands held the Orion's fate. As Jeffrey and Boron struggled in a frantic bid to save a world and redeem humanity itself as more than monsters, the Council viewed the rising tensions with alarm. Fearing the prospect of a new intergalactic war, they seemed resigned to sacrifice an entire people for a fragile peace. And all the while, hidden in darkness, the draconian architects of this merciless extermination scheme watched their engineered Orion apocalypse unfold, ready to seize their prize. In the depths of his makeshift laboratory, Jeffrey works feverishly, combining human stem cells with Orion DNA in a desperate attempt to synthesize a cure. His hands move with practiced precision, even as his heart pounds with the weight of an entire species' fate resting on his shoulders. Injecting the serum into a dying Orion child, Jeffrey holds his breath. Seconds crawl by, each one an eternity. Then, impossibly, the youngster's labored breathing eases. Color returns to their pallid skin. Jeffrey nearly collapses with relief as the child's eyes flutter open, bright with renewed life. But his elation is short-lived. The lab door slams open, revealing a stone-faced human commander flanked by armed soldiers. Jeffrey Adams, you are hereby ordered to cease all unauthorized activities and return to Earth immediately to face disciplinary action. Jeffrey stands tall, defiant. I've found the cure. We can't abandon the Orions now, not when... The commander cuts him off with a sharp gesture. Your orders are not up for debate. You will be on the next transport off Zephyr. Failure to comply will result in immediate court-martial. That night, as Jeffrey packs his meager belongings, a desperate knock sounds at his door. It's Boron, his eyes wide with terror. The Draconians, they've begun rounding up my people. They claim it's a containment measure, but they're executing us in the streets. Please, you're our only hope. Jeffrey grips his friend's trembling shoulders. I won't let this continue. There must be a way to save your people, your culture. Boron thrusts an ancient Orion text into Jeffrey's hands. This speaks of a hidden failsafe, a repository of our genetic memory and knowledge. If you can find it... Jeffrey scans the faded glyphs, realization dawning. With this, the Orions could survive, even if their physical bodies perished. Reaching for his communicator, Jeffrey contacts the only man he trusts to have his back in this, Mike Travis, his rough-edged battle buddy. I need your help, Mike. It's time to take a stand. Orders be damned. Beneath Zephyr's war-torn surface, Jeffrey and his small team navigate ancient tunnels, following Boron's whispered directions. Draconian kill squads and drone patrols lurk around every corner, but they press on, determined. At last, they uncover the entrance to a long-lost underground city. Within its crumbling walls, they discover the remnants of a lab where humans and Orions once worked side by side to preserve Orion heritage. Automated defenses whir to life, mistaking the intruders for enemies. Plasma bolts sear the air as soldiers fall, their dying screams echoing through the ancient chamber. Jeffrey dodges and weaves, desperately trying to reach the control panel. Boron shouts above the chaos. Stop! Defense systems, recognize human biosignature. The weapons fall silent, leaving only the groans of the wounded and the hum of ancient technology. Jeffrey races to the vault at the room's heart, his blood running cold at the sight of a massive Draconian strike team breaching the far wall. Bullets and plasma fly as Jeffrey reaches for the Orion interface, the key to their genetic memory. Time slows as a hulking Draconian in power armor levels his rifle at Jeffrey's unprotected back. Mike shouts a warning and leaps forward, taking the lethal blast meant for his friend. He crumples to the ground, life leaking from a mortal wound. Get that thing back to the Orions. Mike gasps out his final command. With an anguished roar, Jeffrey snatches the interface and flees, Boron covering their desperate escape. They seal the vault behind them, trapping the Draconians inside. Battered and bloody, they fight their way back to the surface, the weight of Mike's sacrifice driving them forward. In the Orion village, Jeffrey activates the interface with trembling hands. A beacon of hope, transmitting the cure and unlocking the Orion's cultural legacy for all those still clinging to life. But even as the tide begins to turn, word of Jeffrey's insubordination reaches the disapproving ears of Earth's authorities. The Galactic Council, ever eager to appease the Draconians, brand Jeffrey and his loyalists as renegades. When human peacekeepers descend on Zephyr with orders to arrest the traitors, Jeffrey finds himself facing an impossible choice: surrender to his own kind, abandoning the Orions to their fate, or stand and fight, pitting human against human in a battle for the very soul of their species. As blaster rifles level at his chest and his former comrades demand his submission, Jeffrey looks to the terrified Orion faces around him, so innocent, so in need of a champion. His expression resolute with persistence, fingers tightening on his weapon. He knows there in that moment that he cannot, will not, leave them to the mercy of genocidal monsters. So be it. If he must become a renegade, a traitor in the eyes of his government, to protect the helpless, then that is the price he will pay. The Orions will not stand alone. He brings his gun to bear, aiming at his fellow humans. A fierce primal growl rumbles in his throat as he prepares to fight for what he knows is right, no matter the consequences. Jeffrey's finger tightened on the trigger as he faced down his former comrades. The tense silence shattered as Boron burst into the room, panting heavily. "Jeffrey, Draconian ships, hundreds of them. They're entering the system." Jeffrey's blood ran cold. He turned to the human peacekeepers, their weapons still trained on him. "We don't have time for this. The Draconians are coming to wipe us all out." The peacekeeper captain's eyes narrowed. How convenient. A distant rumble shook the ground. Jeffrey grabbed a datapad, bringing up tactical displays. "Look for yourself. That's a full-scale invasion fleet." As the captain studied the incoming data, his face paled. "By the stars," Jeffrey addressed the room. "We stand together or we die separately. Your choice." After a tense moment, the captain lowered his weapon. "What's the plan?" Jeffrey sprang into action, barking orders. "I need every able body, human and Orion. Set up defensive perimeters, rig explosives on the major roadways. Get snipers in elevated positions." He pulled Boron aside. "Those ancient texts. Any mention of Orion battle tactics?" Boron's ears twitched. "Yes, there are diagrams of intricate troop formations." "Perfect. Let's integrate those with our infantry strategies." As they worked feverishly to prepare, the sky darkened with Draconian ships. Jeffrey stood atop a watchtower, surveying their hastily assembled forces. Orion farmers clutched makeshift weapons alongside grizzled human marines. The first Draconian dropship screamed towards the surface. Jeffrey's voice rang out. "Hold your positions. Wait for my signal." Heavily armored Draconian troops poured from the ships, backed by towering mechanized walkers. They advanced with military precision, clearly expecting little resistance. Jeffrey waited until they entered the first choke point. "Now!" Hidden explosives detonated, engulfing the front lines. Snipers opened fire from concealed positions as Orion warriors sprang from camouflaged tunnels, catching the invaders in a deadly crossfire. The battle raged for hours. Jeffrey led from the front, coordinating hit-and-run strikes that slowly whittled down the Draconian numbers. But for every enemy that fell, more poured from the sky. As night fell, Jeffrey regrouped with Boron in a makeshift command center. "We can't keep this up forever. We need a new strategy." Boron's eyes widened. "Jeffrey, the texts speak of an ancient Orion superweapon built to defend against cosmic threats. If the Draconians found it, then we need to take it back," Jeffrey finished. He gathered a strike team, outlining a daring plan to infiltrate the Draconian command post. They moved under cover of darkness, utilizing forgotten Orion tunnels to bypass enemy lines. Jeffrey led the charge into the heart of the Draconian defenses, his team fighting tooth and nail to reach the control room. As they battled through the final corridor, Jeffrey came face to face with the towering Draconian commander he'd fought underground. The reptilian's scales bristled with rage. "You've interfered for the last time, human." Their final confrontation was brutal and swift. Jeffrey's smaller size and quick reflexes gave him the edge, and he left the Draconian leader unconscious as they secured the weapon controls. But before they could activate the superweapon, a familiar voice rang out. "Stand down, Jeffrey." He turned to see Captain Reeves, his old friend and commander of the human peacekeepers, leading a squad into the room. "It's over," Reeves said. "The council won't defy the Draconians. Come quietly and maybe we can work something out." Jeffrey opened his mouth to respond when a deafening explosion rocked the facility. Draconian bombers, seeing the weapon about to be lost, began carpet bombing the entire area. In the chaos, Reeves was struck by falling debris. Jeffrey rushed to his side, but it was too late. With a heavy heart, Jeffrey returned to the controls. He met Boron's eyes and nodded grimly. No choice left. He activated the ancient Orion superweapon. A blinding light engulfed the sky as a shockwave of unimaginable power surged outward. The Draconian ships disintegrated under its onslaught. But as the light faded, Jeffrey's heart sank. Sensors showed radiation levels spiking across the planet's surface. Zephyr was dying. "We have to evacuate," he told Boron. "Get everyone to the ships. We need to find your people a new home." As the last transports lifted off, Jeffrey and Boron stood on the bridge, watching Zephyr recede into the distance. The once vibrant world was now a desolate, irradiated husk. Boron placed a hand on Jeffrey's shoulder. "You saved us. Our knowledge, our heritage. It lives on because of you." Jeffrey nodded, but his expression remained grim. He knew the price of victory had been steep, and he knew that in the eyes of humanity, he would now be seen as a renegade, a traitor to his own kind. As they set course for distant stars, Jeffrey steeled himself for the challenges that lay ahead. The Orions had survived, but at what cost? And what would be the consequences of defying not just the Draconians, but the entire galactic order? The news of Jeffrey's actions spread like wildfire across the galaxy. Holo broadcasts and encrypted transmissions buzzed with conflicting reports. On some human worlds, crowds gathered in the streets, cheering Jeffrey as a hero who'd saved an innocent species from extinction. On others, frightened citizens demanded their governments take action against the madman who'd provoked the Draconians. Jeffrey sat in the dimly lit cockpit of their stolen transport, scanning through media feeds, his eyes sharp as he watched a Galactic Council representative declare, "Jeffrey Adams and his co-conspirators are hereby classified as enemies of galactic peace. They will answer for their crimes." Boron's elongated fingers tapped a rapid pattern on the console. "Our options grow limited, friend Jeffrey. Where can we go?" A ping from the communications array caught Jeffrey's attention. He decrypted the message, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I've got coordinates. An old buddy might have our ticket out of this mess." They dropped out of hyperspace in a remote corner of the Rho sector. A patchwork station of welded-together ship hulls and cargo containers loomed before them. As they docked, Jeffrey's hand never left his sidearm. The airlock hissed open. Hank Reynolds stood there, his cybernetic eye whirring as it focused on Jeffrey. "You sure know how to stir up trouble, don't you, Jeff?" Before Jeffrey could respond, a mountain of a man stepped out from behind Hank. Tattoos covered every visible inch of skin, and a vicious-looking vibroblade hung at his hip. "So this is the famous Jeffrey Adams," the newcomer said, his voice a low growl. "I'm Marcus Drake. Welcome to our little piece of paradise." Jeffrey tensed, ready for a fight. Instead, Drake's scarred face split into a feral grin. "Come on in. We've got a lot to discuss." Inside a makeshift war room, Drake laid out his vision. Star charts and tactical displays flickered around them as he spoke of uniting the scattered human clans, reclaiming their warrior heritage, and carving out a new empire. "With the Orion tech you've got, we could bring the Draconians to their knees," Drake said, his eyes gleaming. "What do you say, Adams? Ready to embrace your true nature and join the winning side?" Jeffrey felt Boron stiffen beside him. The Orion leaned close, whispering, "We cannot let this one have access to our people's knowledge. The results would be catastrophic." Jeffrey nodded imperceptibly, his mind racing. He faced Drake, forcing a smile. "It's an interesting proposition, but I'll need to see how you operate before I commit to anything." Drake clapped him on the shoulder. "Fair enough. We've got a raid planned for tomorrow. You can ride along, see how the Blood Daggers do business." Over the next weeks, Jeffrey found himself pulled into Drake's world of violence and plunder. They hit Draconian outposts, rival gangs, even the occasional galactic peacekeeper patrol. Each successful mission swelled their ranks with more disillusioned humans seeking purpose and glory. Jeffrey played his part, all the while looking for a way out. He knew he was walking a razor's edge, but he had to keep the Orion knowledge safe. Everything changed during a raid on a Draconian cargo hauler. As Jeffrey sliced into their computer core, his blood ran cold. There, in stark data streams, was proof the Draconians had found the new Orion sanctuary world. They were massing for a full-scale invasion. He confronted Drake in the hull of their commandeered ship. "You knew about this. You've been sitting on this intel while innocent lives are at stake." Drake's eyes narrowed. Watch yourself, Adams. Don't forget where you are. I'm done playing games, Jeffrey snarled. He drew his blaster, leveling it at Drake's chest. We're leaving, now, and we're taking what we need to save those people. For a tense moment, the only sound was the hum of the ship's engines. Then Drake laughed, a harsh barking sound. You've got guts, I'll give you that. Fine. Take what you need and go, but don't think this is over between us. Jeffrey and his loyalists worked frantically, loading supplies and weapons onto their own ships. As they prepared to depart, Boron gripped Jeffrey's arm. We may already be too late, friend Jeffrey. They emerged from hyperspace to a scene of horror. Draconian warships filled the sky, raining death upon the Orion colony. Jeffrey barked orders, coordinating their ragtag fleet for a desperate rescue mission. Get as many civilians to the transports as you can, he shouted over the comm. I'll lead a team to activate the old defense grid. With luck, we can buy enough time to evacuate. Jeffrey's boots hit the lunar regolith as explosions bloomed across the planet's surface. He raced for the hidden bunker entrance, praying they weren't too late to save at least some of the innocents below. Jeffrey's boots pounded the lunar regolith as he sprinted toward the hidden bunker entrance. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface, casting eerie shadows. He skidded to a halt, punching in the access code with shaking fingers. The blast doors rumbled open, revealing a cavernous interior filled with antiquated machinery. Jeffrey barked into his comms, all units, fall back to secondary positions, we've got incoming. His ragtag rebel force scrambled to obey, taking up defensive positions around the outpost. The first wave of draconian hunter-killers descended like metallic locusts, their plasma cannons scorching the ground. Jeffrey crouched behind a makeshift barricade, his rifle pressed against his shoulder. Hold steady, he muttered. Wait for it. The Draconians advanced, their scaled faces contorted with bloodlust. When they were mere meters away, Jeffrey roared, Now! Hidden charges detonated, engulfing the front ranks in searing flame. Rebel snipers picked off the survivors with practiced ease. But for every Draconian that fell, 2 more took its place. Hours passed in a blur of smoke and gunfire. Jeffrey's throat was raw from shouting orders, his hands slick with blood, both his own and that of his fallen comrades. They'd repelled 3 waves of attackers, but at a terrible cost. A deafening roar shook the very ground beneath their feet. Jeffrey's eyes widened as he saw a massive draconian dreadnought emerge from the clouds, its weapons already charging. Evacuate, Jeffrey screamed into his comm. Get everyone to the cryogenic shelters. As panicked Orion civilians streamed toward the underground facilities, Boron gripped Jeffrey's arm. I'll stay behind, the Orion said, his normally placid features set with willpower. I can buy you time. Jeffrey opened his mouth to argue, but Boron was already sprinting toward the defense grid controls. Swallowing hard, Jeffrey turned to oversee the evacuation. The dreadnought's first salvo reduced entire sections of the outpost to molten slag. Jeffrey herded the last stragglers into the shelter, his heart pounding as he watched Boron's fighter lift off. What followed was a dogfight of epic proportions. Boron's ship danced between streams of enemy fire, launching a relentless barrage of missiles. The dreadnought's shields flickered and failed. Jeffrey's fists clenched as he watched Boron's crippled fighter hurtle toward the dreadnought's bridge. The resulting explosion lit up the sky like a newborn star. In the aftermath, Jeffrey stood before the assembled survivors in the cavernous cryochamber. His voice cracked as he delivered the grim news. We don't have enough pods for everyone. The humans will have to stay behind. A chorus of protests erupted, but Jeffrey silenced them with a raised hand. It's the only way to ensure the survival of the Orion people. The mood was somber as the Orion elders and children were sealed into their cryopods. Jeffrey's hardened warriors wept openly as tiny hands pressed against the frosted glass in farewell. An Orion elder placed a gnarled hand on Jeffrey's shoulder. You have given us a future, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We will carry the memory of your sacrifice across the stars. As the final pod prepared to close, a child's voice piped up. Tell them we'll dream of you until we can wake up again on a new world. Jeffrey's throat tightened as he input the launch sequence. The shelter shuddered, beginning its randomized journey through the cosmos. He turned to face his remaining crew, their eyes reflecting the same stubborn persistence he felt. Let's give them something to remember us by, Jeffrey growled, hefting his rifle.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.